Hello, I'm Patty Flatt, and I will be your professor this term for Chemistry 350, Chemical Literature. And I just want to give you a brief introduction to the course and kind of what I'll be expecting from you this term. So right now we're in the Canvas course shell. So there is a front page here. You have my contact information, my email, and my phone. Email is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. My office hours are by arrangement. So if you email me, I can get back to you and we can set up a time to meet. I can meet with you by Zoom or I can meet with you in person when I'm up on campus and you're up there too. So I'm always happy to do that when you have questions or want to chat about something. So please feel free to always get a hold of me. So in this class, it's a writing intensive class. And so we'll be learning about how you communicate in chemistry and what the chemical literature is all about. So there's a few ways that you can get around the classroom to kind of figure out what you should be doing. The module section is going to be the best way to see kind of what's going on each week and what is due. So if you click on the modules and we'll shift over there, I've got a brief introduction to the course format. So this is an online course. It's asynchronous, so you can complete the assignments on your own when you have time to do them. But you do have specific due dates for each of the weeks. So each week you'll have a new module that opens up. They do look kind of long, but that's because your textbook is embedded into the Canvas shell. So when you're looking at each week up at the top, I'll give you the summary for that week. So if we click on this, this will tell you what reading exercises that you have, and then the following homework assignments that you actually have as well. These due dates are not quite updated for this year yet, so I will be updating those shortly. So make sure that you go in and take a look and see the correct due dates for this year. But each week you should log in at least by Sunday so that you can see what is due during the week. And if you've never used it before, Canvas has a calendar application as well that is really phenomenal. So if you click on your own calendar, it will show you all of the things that are actually due in there. You can see I'm in December and from a very long time. No, it's December 2023. And you can see I've got stuff that's crossed out. So I must have things that are not open or not due anymore. But when you get into your Canvas course shell and your calendar, it'll have your actual assignments that are going to be due for that week, and you can click on these guys and you can go straight away right into those assignments. So this one was for Foundations of Integrative Medicine, which is now closed. But you can see if I clicked on this, I would go there since this is in my shell. So you'll have your things show up for Chemistry 350 in your Canvas shell, and any other assignments that are associated with any of your other courses that are in Canvas will also show up in this calendar. And so we'll pop back into the dashboard and go back into the class shell. So that's the module setup, your calendar setup. We can go take a quick look at the syllabus for the course. We can pop in here. Again, this has my information as well as the home page. I'm totally happy to meet with you anytime during the course. So just shoot me an email. My phone, I will actually pop in my cell phone in here too, because that's easier to get a hold of me. I don't always get messages succinctly through my campus phone. So email, I should always get that, and I will get my cell in here. So if you text me on my cell, please let me know who you are and what class you're in so that I know what you need and when to get back to who. All right. So this just gives you some of the objectives and the goals for the course. You're going to be learning about how you set up poster presentations, um, oral presentations and seminars, what it looks like to see a peer-reviewed journal article. Not too much on grants, but we'll touch on that just a little bit more. We'll also talk about ethical and safety considerations within this class. And then we'll talk about laboratory notebooks as well, what should go into them, how you write them up. You'll have some mock assignments where you'll be writing a laboratory notebook entries, and you'll also have some things where you'll try to take laboratory notebook entries and convert them into shorter paragraphs that would go in a peer-reviewed journal article. You won't write a full peer-reviewed journal article, but you might write sections, like a section of the methodology or something like that. We'll talk also about how you make good graphics and how you reference different things within your different types of presentations, whether that's in writing or in an oral presentation or on a poster. All right, so grading is kind of this standard grading scale with pluses and minuses within the system. If you are late with the work, please get a hold of me as soon as possible to let me know what's going on. And if you have an emergency situation or are very sick and can't finish the work for the week, you can let me know. Our COVID policy is not quite in place, and our COVID policy now is so you can view any illness recommendations at these websites for the state, but being an online class, this shouldn't really affect you for this term. Okay. So in addition to the modules site that you have here, I also really like Canvas because it lets you just kind of jump in and follow what you're doing for the week. So if you have lecture content, that will be posted in here. This lecture will be found there for week 1. And then as you get into the different reading sections, if you just click on there, it will bring you to the textbook, and you can see some pages are pretty short. You can always go over here and click the next button, and it'll bring you to the next section. Then you can read what's going on in here, some nice graphics. And then when you get down to the bottom of this page, you can keep going to the next sections. There's some embedded videos that you'll have to watch in here as well. And then when you get to the end of each section, you'll also have your homework, right? So you'll get done reading what you need to read for this section. And then you get to your assignment. And this actually doesn't look the same for me as it does for you. It won't actually show it to me. I get the settings for it. But when you click in here, it will let you go into your homework quiz. You've got 2 times to try the homework. So if you get things wrong the first time, you can go back to the readings, double check, and redo the homework. This is just checking to see that you're doing the reading and you're getting some of those key points from those sections. You also do have an assignment this week that is a writing assignment. That will take a little bit longer than going through and doing these smaller homework sections. And that is your laboratory notebook documentation. So for this one, you've got your instructions here. So you can click on them. You can always download these if you want to have these downloaded. But this is talking about what you need in your laboratory notebook, right? And what that's going to look like. So the way I like to have laboratory notebooks set up, it's a very important tool for recording and documenting all of the stuff that you're doing inside the lab. And so it needs to be well kept so that anybody that would be reading it can go back in and can repeat your experiment and do the same thing and hopefully get the same results that you have gotten. It's also a document that is a legally binding document. So it documents your work that can be held up in a court of law. It can be used to substantiate allegations of fraud. So you want to have all the details in there, the dates, the compounds you're using in a real laboratory setting so that you don't get into trouble for I don't know, making up data and things like that. Right? So some of the things you want to have in your notebook, you want to record all your work in ink. So use a pen, record all of the information in your notebook. I like written notebooks that are bound notebooks. So you don't want to have the type of spines and things in a notebook that allow you to rip paper out. You want to make sure that it's a bound notebook. It also is best to have one that's handwritten. There are some electronic notebooks. If you're using this in an actual lab, these ones will lock in your entries so you can't erase them. And it will have places where you'll do electronic signatures at the end of the day. And that makes them the legitimate forms of notebooks, just like a bound written one. So you want to make sure you write legibly and never erase anything. You can put a single line through, but you always want to be able to read what you have in there. So if you do a calculation incorrectly, for example, and you've got that written in your notebook, you can put a line through it or you can circle it and say, this is incorrect, but leave it there. It's helpful for yourself as well so that you can see what you've tried before or where you've made a mistake before so that you don't do that again in the future. So it really is a record-keeping tool. Right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to always look, like a publication, right? This is an actual laboratory notebook. So at the beginning of each experiment that involves any chemical compounds or solvents, you want to create a reagent table, list the structures of those chemical molecules, and then features of that compound. So the molecular formula is great, molar mass, boiling point, melting point, density, solubility, and any general safety information that you need to know to take precautions while you're working with those substances. This is kind of crucial to keep yourself safe first while you're working with different things, but it also gives you an idea of how you can work with that particular solvent or compound, whether you can heat it or not, and things like that. If you have any relevant documents, or maybe you do a graph in Excel or have data that comes from an instrument, you want to tape those copies into your notebook. You can also do that with protocols sometimes too, but I'll show you how I like to write up protocols in my notebook. When you actually write the protocol, I think it gives you a better knowledge, especially if it's a new protocol, of what you're going to be doing in the lab. And it's helpful to do that before you go into the lab so you're familiar with what's going to be happening and you've already really read what you're going to do. So you're not taking that time away. Because sometimes that is very relevant to whether your experiment's going to work or not. It may be time sensitive. You may not be able to wait too long in between one step and the next step. So kind of knowing what you're going to be doing is important. So again, you'll also want to show all of your calculations that are done. Even when you're doing those steps on a calculator. So show it step by step and how you arrived at those answers. That can be very pertinent and help you catch when you make mistakes, right? You should always also be thinking about that red flag, like, oh, what kind of answers should I be getting? What's the ballpark of what I'm expecting, Form a hypothesis about what you're doing. That also helps you catch mistakes when they happen. If it's, really off of what you think it's going to be, you'll be able to say, oh, I must have, you know, did division when I meant to do multiplication or something like that. And then if you're in the lab, you want to be able to keep the notebook secure. Your notebooks, when you're doing laboratory experiments in your classes, are things that you keep and can take anywhere. But if you're actually working in a lab, the laboratory notebook belongs to your lab. It doesn't belong to you personally. And you should never take it out of the lab. You should do all of the notebook entries in the lab and keep your notebook there. That way, if somebody else is in the lab and they need to find some information from you or from an experiment that you've started, they can look at your notebook and get that information easily. So it's a document that is fundamental for the laboratory. So here is an example of how to get started. When you are doing a lab or an experiment in the lab, I always like to title it. I put the date at the top. Give some description of what I'm going to be doing and what the purpose is, right? So this one is to analyze Excedrin tablets using thin layer chromatography or TLC. And it says, I will use aspirin, acetaminophen, and caffeine as standards. And then I have the structure. Well, you're going to fill out the rest of this table. But I have the structure of that first compound, acetyl salicylic acid, which is also aspirin. So I've drawn out the structure. I've given some of the key characteristics. It's molar mass, density, melting point, boiling point, solubility, and then some of the safety concerns. So you'll have these other compounds that are in this experiment that you'll need to look up, find the structures, find some of their key characteristics, and some of their safety concerns. So safety concerns can be found on SDSs, safety data sheets. So every molecule that is available for purchase has a safety data sheet. So you can just kind of look in there and say, is it very toxic? If it's not, if it's pretty safe to work with, you can just note that at the side. But this is really critical to do when you're working with different compounds. It's safety for yourself, right? So if you don't do this, you may not know that methanol, for example, is pretty toxic and you don't really want to be getting it on your hands. You don't want to be breathing it, the vapors and things like that. So this lets you know what you're working with and how careful you need to be with these different substances. Okay, so we talked about that first part of the notebook, having a purpose statement, and then this reagent table. And then we talked briefly about safety data sheets. Here is a link in this one for the safety data sheet for the aspirin. I don't think I can access this unless I actually download it from the Word document. So if I download the Word document, I would be able to link into this. You'll be able to link into that. But I'm just going to jump over here. We'll talk about ChatGPT in a little bit as well. But I'm going to look for the SDS page for aspirin right now. Okay, so I see a safety data sheet. And this one is for acetyl salicylic acid, which is our aspirin. So you can see safety data sheets come from different companies. Anybody who sells the compound has to have a safety data sheet for the compound. But it's got details of the hazards, right? So this one has a warning symbol. And why does it have warning symbol? It has some acute toxicity if taken orally. You might be thinking, what? I take aspirin all the time. Well, you only take a very specific amount of it, right? If you took a lot of it, it would have acute toxicity, right? Gastric bleeding and things like that. Okay. So it gives you some precautionary statements. Wash your skin thoroughly after handling. Do not eat, drink, or smoke when using the product. And if swallowed, call a poison center. all of these things, right? So you want to be careful if you're working with large amounts of this. All right. So this is the safety data sheet. So you can get used to looking these up. They're all available online. So we're going to jump back in. So for the notebook, once you have been able to do your safety section for the different reagents that you're going to work with, another thing to do is to actually write down your reagents that you're using. So I've written down the acetaminophen for this one. It comes from Flynn Scientific. I have the catalog number, the lot number of the one that I own, and the CAS number for that. So this just gives me an idea of what reagents I'm using. If you're doing experiments and say, I'm using this as a standard and it has a contaminant in it or it's broken down, I can go back and see if there's a problem with that lot. Okay, so it's important. You can also see some things expire over time as well and break down. So it's good to know if you're using expired products. So when you're writing the method, when I have a written notebook like this, I like to set the procedure section up and divide the paper into two sides. And then on the left-hand side, write out what you're supposed to do for the procedure. And then on the right-hand side, you can place useful notes in there or observations, as well as any deviations that might happen while you're doing the experiment. So here is an example of that. So here's my procedure written out here just the way it is on the paper. Using a micro spatula, transfer small portions of each standard to individual test tubes. For tablets, grind in a clean mortar and pestle. So here I have some notes about this. I used a pea-size amounts and set up standards for aspirin, acetaminophen, and caffeine. I ground up one Excedrin tablet and transferred as much as possible to the test tube. They were all white powders. Right, so that just lets me know kind of what I did here. Using a calibrated pipette, add approximately 1 ml of methanol to each sample. Well, I said, oops, I didn't have methanol, so I used 1 ml of acetone for each instead. So anytime you do any deviations from your protocol, you can note that. It's kind of like a recipe in the kitchen, right? Sometimes you don't always have all the ingredients, and so you use what you have, make a substitute for butter or eggs or whatever you're missing, right? So that can happen in the lab as well. Sometimes it doesn't work, right? Sometimes you really need the methanol. But sometimes you like, oh, well, I'm going to try it with this and see if it goes all right. Right, so you would do that for your whole protocol throughout your procedure. So for this assignment, you also need to do your results section as well. So you'll be looking at a TLC. You should take a photograph of your TLC and print it out, tape it into your notebook, or copy paste it and hand draw what you see in the video. You should then, and so you're going to get the results from the video. If you don't know, copy pasting images from your computer. If you've got a PC, if you hit the Shift, the window key, and the S all at the same time, it will bring up the copy square for you to grab, any part of the document. So if I will do that right now. I'm going to hit Shift, the window key, and S. And you see how it kind of gets dark and then it gives me this key thing. And then I can hold my mouse down and drag it across the screen. Sorry about that. And then once whatever I've dragged across, it has copied it. And then I can just Control V to paste it in there. Whoop, I've got to be, I'm not in here actually. So it won't let me paste it in if I'm not actually in a Word document. So let me open a Word document and I can just show you that you can actually paste into that. So if I go Control V, you can see it just popped in what I pasted. I actually had a student show me that a couple years ago, and it's been like the best thing ever. So, yes, Control or Shift, Windows key, and S, and you can pretty much screen capture almost anything. So you'll need to do that when you're doing your write-up for this week. So for your laboratory notebook, for your fake assignment, you're actually going to watch me doing an assignment and making a laboratory entry of it. You need page numbering on each of your notebook pages. You need a title, a purpose for the experiment, a reagent table, the protocol on the left-hand side, and then you'll need to observe the video and see what deviations I do from the protocol and note them on the right-hand side. Also note any observations that you notice about the experiment. If you have to do any data or calculations for the results, you need to do that for your TLC and then write up any conclusions. So this is going to be worth 50 points for this section. So it's a pretty big assignment for this first week. And then you'll want to upload it into Canvas. Right, so there are a lot of really good apps that will help you turn JPEGs into PDFs since you'll be writing this out. And then once you get it into PDF format, you can add pictures to it, or you can print things and tape it in there and then make a JPEG so that you can upload it as a PDF back into Canvas. So I like Cam Scanner. It's free. It'll let you take multiple JPEGs and put them into one file, and is pretty easy to use. All right, so that is your first week of assignments that you'll be working on. I don't think I have too much left to show you. If you feel like you get stuck or want a little bit of extra help, please let me know. We'll see, this is the assignments tabs. I can see all of the assignments. You'll only be able to see the assignments for week 1 right now, so these 3 should be open. Next week, we will get a little bit more involved in writing a methods section for a journal article. So yes, so that is our introduction to the class, introduction to week 1. I'm looking forward to reading your entries, getting to know you guys a little bit better. I know asynchronously it's a little hard to do, but do feel free if you're in the DeVolder building, swing by, say hi. Always happy to talk with you and help you with anything that you're having questions on. All right, thanks.